take a picture of me taking on the web.
Alright, I brought a few things here I want to share with you today. I'll tell you now a couple stories about Elmer again. There was a fellow giving a speech one day, and he was talking to a group, and he said something about President Roosevelt. And a fellow in the audience piped up and said, "I don't like him." And the speaker continued, talking about the New Deal and all the programs that helped the American people. And the fellow in the audience piped up again and said, "I don't like him." And finally the speaker said, "The president's actions are guided by a power beyond himself, infinite in comprehension." And the fellow piped up a third time and said, "I don't like her either." My missus did a wonderful thing for women journalists. In 1932, she and I were campaigning in different cities, and the newspaper editors didn't have very many women reporters. Oh, there was one or two doing wedding news and recipes. So the men went out and hired some women. They started getting front page bylines and loving every minute of it. They were afraid they'd get fired after the election was over. But Eleanor fixed that. On the third day we're in the White House, she announces, "I'm having my own press conferences and no men are allowed." So they meet in the green room. They're called the green room girls, and sometimes they scoop them in. Eleanor will let out with a piece of news that my press secretary Steve Early hasn't given the men. Irritates the men, delights the girls. Well, it was the Depression that brought us to Washington. After the inauguration in '33, Will Rogers said, "America hasn't been so happy in 3 years as they are today. No money, no banks, no work, no nothing. But they know they've got a man in there who's wise to our Congress, wise to our so-called big men. The whole country's behind him just as long as he does something. If he burned down the Capitol, we would cheer and say, well, at least we got a fire started anyhow." You know, feelings are running very strongly against President Hoover. There was a little joke going around. Hoover asked his Secretary of the Treasury to lend him a nickel to buy a soda for a friend. The Secretary said, "Here's a dime, treat all of them." Well, I believe what the country needed was bold, persistent experimentation. Now, it's common sense. You take an idea, you try it. If it fails, you admit it frankly, and try another. Above all, try something. The way to make progress is to believe that we build on what we have, that today is better than yesterday, and that tomorrow will be better than either. The banking system was in collapse. Many governors had already closed all their banks, so on March 6th, I announced a banking holiday. We closed the banks to see which ones were strong enough to return to operation. On March 12th, I had the first fireside chat. That was on banking. And I told the people, I want to speak to you for a few minutes about banking. I want to tell you what's been done the last few days, why it was done, and what else we're going to do. I told them, your money doesn't stay in the bank, though. It's used by industry and agriculture for commercial paper and loans. It keeps the wheels of the economy running. I said, your money is safer in a reopened bank than under the mattress. And the next day, this was 10:30 Sunday night, the next day, more money was put back into the banks than was being taken out. Confidence had been restored. That's the job of the president. And Will Rogers said, Franklin Roosevelt has explained banking so well, even the bankers now understand it. Well, we get 7,000 letters a day at the White House, people asking for help. Now, I took 3 of them here, my secretary, Grace Tully. This is what people are writing about. This from Baxley, Georgia, 1934, Mr. President. I'm obliged to ask you a lending and helping hand because I know of no one on earth to do me any good but our own president. My father and mother's home will be taken away from them the 1st of January if we can't get up $50. My father is 83, my mother's 64, I'm a poor girl, my salary is $3 a week. This one from a 10-year-old girl. Children write to us asking for help for their family. Warren, Ohio. Dear President Roosevelt, please help us. My mother is sick and my father paralyzed and cannot work. We are 4 children and 2 parents. We have no one to buy us Christmas presents, and if you want to buy a Christmas present, please buy a stove to do our cooking. And this last one from a girl who's 13 from Moorhead, Minnesota. Dear Mrs. Roosevelt, I'm 13 years old and going to school with my twin brother and sister May, who's 11. Daddy's been having kind of hard luck. I had to quit music lessons about 2 years ago as we had to sell the piano Daddy bought for me to get clothes and stuff to eat. Mama's been working clothes over for the last 2 years. I do hope President Roosevelt can make those big money guys loosen up the money so my daddy can get carpenter work. Well, I look around and I know there are people in your family who's been helped by the New Deal. What did the American people want from their government? Jobs. Our primary task was to put people to work. And we did it. TWA, WPA, TVA, CCCs, and some of your families may have been in. By October of 1933, we had put 3 million people back to work. And the WPA, over several years that it existed, gave employment to 8.5 million people all over the country. Now, you know, the WPA was criticized. They called it we putter around and we poke along, just leaning on the shovel, digging ditches, and leaf raking. Well, let me tell you what those boys did leaning on a shovel. 572,000 miles of roads, 78,000 bridges, 8,000 parks, 350 airports, city streets, hospitals, sidewalks, and schools. They did all that leaning on a shovel. Now, what do we do about the homes? 1,000 homes a day were being foreclosed when I took office. What do? We helped the homeowner. We passed the Homeowners Loan Act. We reduced the interest rates from 8% down to 5%, and we saved 4 out of 5 homes in this country. We also saved many farms as well, because we had a loan act for them, too.